Good afternoon, everybody. It's a follow-up to an officer-involved shooting yesterday evening. I'll recap the incident as it transpired. I will tell you before I start, as I did last night, there are several things that happened during this officer-involved shooting and incident that really happened at the same time. So to provide a narrative that flows is a little bit tricky with this because, again, several of these things were happening at the very same time. So I'll start here. Around 9:22 p.m. last night, we have 13-year veteran Officer Michael Price. He's a police officer. He's on his way home in his personal vehicle. He turns into his apartment complex, which is on Cruz Road. And as he pulls into the apartment complex, he sees a car that's backed into a handicap spot. It's a very small complex. He knows the cars that should be there and are there. This car was running, occupied by what he believed to be 3 black males. It drew his attention to it, so he sat in his personal car for just a minute and kind of watched what happened. As he watched the events transpire, he saw 2 guys get out of the car and walk to the trunk of the car. One of them got a bag out of the trunk, handed it to him. The other guy took a light-colored jacket off, put a dark-colored jacket on, and put a ski mask on. Police work, that's a clue. And this officer, Officer Price, had been involved with some stakeouts that we have been doing over the past month and a half. We've had 8 incidents since October 28th of businesses that have been robbed. 7 of 8 of them actually been robbed between 7:30 and 10:30 at night. Majority of them are right there at Beach and University or on Atlantic Boulevard. Beach Boulevard right there is a split for patrol zones for us. So there's Patrol Zone 2 and Patrol Zone 3. Each one of those zones have been working these stakeouts. And this has, again, been going on since October. So Officer Price is aware of some incidents that we've had, sees what's happening, knows that on the other side of Cruz Road, that backs up to the Virginia College, which is there in Beach and University. It's separated, Cruz Road is separated by about a 6-foot concrete block wall. So as he's watching what's going on, he sees one of the subjects who put the ski mask on run to the wall, jump over the wall. At that point in time, Officer Price goes back into his apartment, gets his bulletproof vest, gets his police radio, and gets his gun belt. Gets on the police radio and calls in what he has just seen happen to the officers in that area. That information certainly gets the attention of all the patrol officers who are in that zone, and they begin to make their way to Beach and University. He obviously doesn't know what exactly is transpiring. He says that, puts that out on the radio to the other officers. 5 minutes later, at 9:27, 2 employees from the Jimmy John's, which is right there at Beach and University, call into 911 advising they had just been robbed. It was a black male in a ski mask wearing a red bag that robbed them. Again, like I said before, this is things that are happening all about the same time. So as that information is put out to patrol officers over the radio, one officer responds and sees that subject, matching that description, running out of the Jimmy John's. He actually runs out of the Jimmy John's and runs towards the back. That officer remains in his car, rolls his window down, and pursues him, if you will, from his car while this subject is on foot, giving him loud verbal commands to stop, police, stop what you're doing. Doesn't pay attention to that, keeps running. Matter of fact, he actually changes direction from running from the back of that business, running towards the front of the business, around the business, and again to the other side of the business. All this while that officer is pursuing him, if you will, in the car. Still window down, still giving him directions to stop. This subject does not decide to do that. He goes to that wall. Now, he's on the other side of the wall from where Officer Price is. Subject running from that officer chasing him, hits that wall again, throws the bag over the wall first, follows himself with that bag, drops down. Okay, like I said, things are kind of happening all at the same time. The vehicle, which had been occupied by 2 of those subjects, pulls out of the apartment complex. Another officer who, again, I told you before, this got everybody's attention up there in those patrol zones when this is happening. Those officers made their way to that location, saw the vehicle pulling out, and began to initiate a traffic stop just a very short distance down Cruz Road on that car. The car was occupied by 2 individuals, and the police cars, there were 2 of the police cars there, had a couple officers with them, so there was quite a contingent down there stopping that car. Again, at that same time is when that subject comes over the fence, sees Officer Price. Officer Price sees him, recognizes him as, hey, that's the same guy that just went over there. Heard the robbery go out to the Jimmy John's. Again, these are clues. Puts together very quickly. This is the same subject. Now, during these individual robberies that we've listed, I think the majority of them have involved a handgun. Hasn't been anybody shot, but a handgun has been displayed in the vast majority of them. So Officer Price knows exactly what's going on. He gives directions to that subject who's hopped over the fence to stop, identifies himself as a police officer. That subject does not stop. He continues to run from him. Now, some of the details that we have there, when we have one of these officer-involved shootings, we're not able to immediately question the officer as to what he did. There's some rules that govern how we do that. It's an investigation, if you will, criminal, and until we reach an administrative point or the state attorney has made a decision in the case, we're really not able to specifically question that officer. So what we're getting some is, if I told you before that the officer was in his car behind him, as he made that wall, he could hear Officer Price's engagement with him from the other side, telling him to stop, telling him to do this, and then that officer actually heard Officer Price begin to fire at that subject. Well, at that same time that Officer Price fires his issued handgun at that subject, a second officer, Officer David Couch, is one of the officers on the traffic stop down Cruz Road. Officer Couch is a 9-year veteran with JSO. He leaves on foot from that traffic stop and runs down to where Officer Price has engaged the subject. He too, he's armed with his rifle, his departmental issued rifle, and he too begins to engage that subject with the gun. He provides direction as well for the subject to stop, put his hands up, to give up, to comply with the officer's orders. None of this is happening by this subject. Officer Couch fires at least 5 times, possibly 6. We still have a shell casing that we're trying to locate. And Officer Price fires 4 times with his handgun. The subject is struck twice, once in the ankle and once in the thigh. I mentioned last night that Officer Couch is a registered nurse. Officer Couch goes to provide aid to this subject and realizes that the shot that he's received in the thigh is probably hitting his femoral artery as he is bleeding profusely. We are issued tourniquets, and Officer Couch knows how to use it, goes back to his car, retrieves that tourniquet, and begins to apply the tourniquet to the individual that's hit. That individual was transported by rescue to UF Health. He initially was life-threatening. His condition has improved, and he's currently listed as a serious but stable condition. And according to the trauma doc at Shands or UF Health, had that tourniquet not been applied, he probably would have either died at the scene or died en route to the hospital. That 16-year-old is Dominion Bradshaw. Okay, he's been arrested and charged with armed robbery. He's absentee booked into the jail. The 2 males in the car is 24-year-old Cameron Pooler and 19-year-old Harry Davis. Both of them have also been charged with armed robbery in the case. Harry Davis is the only one of those 3 that is a gang member. He's a registered member or certified gang member for the Squad 5 gang. And I have some pictures over here. The picture to my immediate left is the handgun that was removed from the red bag, which is to its left. That is the cash that was taken from the Jimmy John's. That is the same bag. If you notice, the picture below is the still photograph from Jimmy John's of the surveillance video that show the subject who is armed with that handgun. And if you look closely, you can see that his finger is on that trigger. He's also got that hot pink bag with him that he used in the commission of this robbery, as well as several of the other robberies. That's no BB gun. That's no orange tip. That is a cannon. When you're working Jimmy John's evening shift and somebody comes in and sticks that in your face, it's about this big, and it's dangerous. Obviously, it's a gun. With that hammer pulled back, and that's the condition that we found it. That hammer pulled back, it takes a very, very light pull to go from that position to a fired position, causing the death of somebody within that Jimmy John's restaurant. And again, of these 8 robberies that we have listed, there have been several that have occurred just the same way. The pink bag with the handgun being used, the silver handgun. It's very, very, it's very frightening to see what occurred. So at this point in time, the 2 officers have been placed on administrative leave, and again, that's standard per our policy. There is a separate investigation that's done, as in with these officer-involved shootings like this. The state attorney's office will conduct an investigation, and our homicide cold case unit will also conduct an investigation into the use of force. Once that investigation is concluded, an administrative review of the response to resistance will be conducted, at our level, which really looks at our policy and its use and deployment of force there. I can take questions if anybody has any.
During training time, Junior, this pink bag is recognizable to you. How many other cases? How many other?
I don't want to go specifics with that because I'm still working through it, but there are other surveillance videos that we have that has a very similar bag. Some of those, like this is it's kind of a pretty picture when you look at it, but it's a blow up of that. Some of those surveillance are better than others, and you can see what looks like a red or a hot pink bag. And in a few of them, I don't want to go into specifics because that could damage our case. But we're still working through to search the car, get a search warrant on the car. And from the robbery standpoint with investigating these cases, there's still quite a bit of work from DNA work that can be done at the restaurant, just trying to find property that could be taken and associate these three individuals with those like we believe them to be. But that's not a fast process that happens there.
When you first consider, how much money do you think they've gotten out of all these robberies total?
We, as a standard course, we really don't talk about how much money is taken at these robberies. One, it puts these businesses at jeopardy to talk about that. When you put that kind of thing out, it'd be like telling you how much money somebody got in a bank robbery. We don't do that because it may encourage somebody else. Certainly nowhere near enough to have that gun pointed in my face.
You said that there were Asian restaurants that were targeted earlier. This is not that?
No, it's not. There were at least 4 Asian restaurants: the Wok House, the Wok and Roll, the Hunan Wok, and the Hot Wok. So we're 4 of those listed are of Asian types of restaurants, and they go between Beach Boulevard, Monument Boulevard, another Beach Boulevard, and University Boulevard. And I can provide that list out to the PIO of the ones we think are associated there. We had an attempt at an Exxon restaurant, a Smoothie King, and a Dunkin' Donuts, and yesterday during the day, a Subway. And that was a little bit off time-wise because that was about 2:20 in the afternoon, but the other ones occurred between 7:30 and 10:30 p.m. Again, what Officer Price thought was happening, and that's that's good. That's a good example that despite the fact that we may be off duty, we're never off. You can't undo police training, and thankfully so. This community should be very pleased that the men and women of this agency take the time to notice these things in their off-duty capacity. Didn't go into his house, didn't shut the door, got involved, did what any good policeman should do, and thankfully that keeps these guys from having number 9. And again, you see how dangerous that is. Worked homicide a while. When you see these kind of things, there have been other cases where that hammer's been pulled back and somebody's not here because of that kind of dangerous behavior.
Kamasi, Channel 4. Can you talk about the interaction between this suspect inside that Jimmy John's? Did he say anything to the person there? I mean, how many people were inside at the time?
I know of at least 2 employees in there, and I don't know if there had other customers in there at the time. These have been, and it's typical for this kind of thing, just violent talk, showing that gun, putting fear. It's all about fear. I mean, like I said, that's a big picture of the gun, and that doesn't do it justice when it's pointed at you. And these are at least 8 victims of this. That each one of these folks that was on the receiving end of that gun at these restaurants, they're just trying to earn a living. They're just trying to make it through the holidays with their families and not wind up dead. And here are 3 individuals who, 16-year-old is out just perpetrating this kind of crime, spreading that much hate and discontent through this community for no good reason. For not talking what he asked about the money, but for a very little amount of money for that kind of fear.
Did you have these 3 listed as potential suspects before this happened?
No, did not.
What action is, did the other 2 people in the car, do you know, were they armed? Did you see them?
There were 2 other guns in the car that we could kind of see from the outside. Until we execute that search warrant, I can't tell you whether they're actually handguns or what they are. They look and appear to be handguns, but we've had incidents before that they could be fake guns. I can tell you that is every bit real.
Where was that gun found?
That was inside the pink bag.
Inside the pink bag.
Any other questions?
Jason First Coast, which of the men did you say was a registered gang member in the car?
Sure. That is Harry Davis, and he's a Squad 5 gang member.
There was no one injured. I mean, there were no any robberies, nobody was shot or beaten or in any way.
No, there's been no
harmed.
physical
No
injuries.
physical injuries.
Any other questions?
How difficult would it have been to find these guys without this happening?
I can tell you this much: our robbery detectives do a fairly amazing job with just a very little bit of video evidence. Sometimes, people think, oh, it's so simple because they're on video, and here's people that are wearing masks and doing what they can to conceal their identity. We do fairly well with solving these robberies. These are 8. I wish we could have solved this at 1 because that would be, steps towards people not being victimized. But sometimes they're difficult. Again, like I said, they don't put it out there who they are. We had actually worked quite a bit doing some stakeouts around these types of restaurants. You have a pattern that emerges, and it seems pretty good. But as you look through some of these dates, it went between 10/28 and then 12/7, and then 12/7 to 12/13. So you think, oh, these are easy to hit, and we do what we can and try to deploy manpower from the city where we see these things. But you do the best you can, and sometimes it just doesn't come up.
And this officer that saw it, that happened to live there, that sounds like kind of a rare thing to happen. Does that happen more than people think, or kind of talk about that?
Well, it's rare that you kind of stumble across this kind of in your own backyard, if you will. But the number of incidents that are handled by off-duty JSO officers every year, it's unfathomable what this city would have to deal with if these off-duty officers didn't handle crimes when they see them or handle incidents when they see them. It's huge. But when this kind of thing comes together, I like to kind of think that's good police work to do that. But that's just heads up common sense to see something, realize what it is or what it could be, and do it the right way. And thankfully, neither one of these officers went home with a hole that God didn't give them. And the good guys won.
Any other questions? All right.
Thanks, guys.